And welcome to the Jameel Rawls Show. And very quickly, what I want to go over is follow up on the subject I was going over earlier, dealing with criminology. And a lot of people believe you have to go to, if you want to do policing research, you have to go to an academy, or you have to, be basically recruited by the intelligence community or something. And if you want to think quicker and learn how to analyze your environment better, there's no better way to do it than just learn how to become, learn. You can start out with crossword puzzles, and then you can say, well, this story looks cool in the news, but I don't believe that, so I want to look into it. Or you can say, you know, I believe my friend stole my car, and I'm not sure if he did it or not. So instead of going to the cops, I want to find out for myself. So you can look for opportunities to do your own type of investigative research. For me, it came through conspiracy research, which doesn't really interest me anymore necessarily. I'm more into the metaphysical um, research, but I still research common subjects like law and medicine and things like that. But anyhow, um, going over. So my grandmother was a lawyer, and so that always interested me in the types of cases she had. And I realized that lawyers often had legal investigators, law firms would have. And I would hear stories about major law firms in New York who had really good investigators. And and I remember hearing people say things like, I wish the cops had good as investigators as the lawyers did. I used to be like, wow, the lawyers have investigators? That's interesting. And these people would be hired by law firms. One of the things I didn't really get about the legal investigators was that they didn't really have from my perception and from what I see is like somebody who actually is a cop has informants probably working for them, or they can create informants if they wanted to. And somebody working for a law firm, but I don't know if they would pay people off or whatever. Uh, they can have informants too. They can pay for the people to inform on other people. Like they can create snitches anytime they want. But I think it'd be easier for somebody in law enforcement to do that than it would be just a PI. But because a law enforcement person can threaten the person with jail versus somebody who's just working for the legal investigators, they might just say, hey, just pay them off, so to speak. But then over time, I started like reading a lot of different books and learning more and more and more. And I realized that like you can look to countries like the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom would have the MI5, which is its domestic intelligence, and they had the MI6, which is its foreign intelligence. And they make so many TV shows about MI5 and MI6. Every time you turn around, Hollywood's making a movie about it, or there's a new book coming out about it. And so, growing up, I'm just like, James Bond is a 007. I'm interested in 007. Then that kind of gets into Sir John Dee. I think Sir John Dee, the Black Magician, he was the original 007. They signed his name in 007. So, but anyhow, so then I learned a little bit about general investigators, and a lot of people think people who study conspiracy research are just wacky people who just read a bunch of blogs and don't know what they're talking about. You'd be surprised the countless hours I spent studying real live investigators. Anybody from foreign intelligence to regular cops on the street, anybody. But general investigators, like again, the scenario with the law firm PI, they have clients and they would go for small businesses. So say I have a small business and I'm worried about the people in my small business doing something I don't want them to be doing, I might get an investigator to go check out the small business. Check out my business, make sure nobody's stealing from me, make sure everything's going right. Corporations, a large corporation would want people on the team to make sure everything's going safely. You know, we can't afford to miss any money. Is anybody stealing? Is there corporate espionage going on? Is there somebody in my corporation who's working for my rival? Uh, Retail establishment, you know, who's stealing? You know, same thing. And individuals, you know, who there's individual background checks and whatnot. Missing persons, that's probably at the top for any type of investigation. Pre-employment background checks, internal theft investigation. That's big. If you got, like, again, the company we were just talking about, the internal theft investigation. You know, a boss always wants to know when they're being stolen from. And basically, this gets into counter intelligence, undercover investigations, all sorts of stuff. And then when you're dealing, so say like somebody says, hey, I want you to check out my corporation and see what's going on, or check out a different corporation or whatever. And I didn't just, you can, I mean, even on CSI films, they show this on television. But you'd always look for actors who cooperate, you know, in a rational, planned manner. Like most people who suspect something, there's foul play or something wrong is going on, if they're not a trained detective, they're going to be looking for something really, like, spectacular and crazy. They're going to say, that person doesn't look like they would do that. This doesn't look, see, that, you know, the person isn't trained to be a detective. Because, you know, people plan stuff out in a rational manner. They rehearse in a rational manner. So if I got X amount of people working for me at my company, I'm not going to be looking for them to be high on drugs or to be acting crazy. I'm going to be looking for them to be calm, rational. It's going to be easy for me to miss it. And then I'm going to look for what's the structure that connects these activities. Like if I'm at my company, if stuff's coming to missing at my company, or I'm losing money, what is there a structure that has connected these activities within my company through the people or through the operations of my company? Then there's environmental factors. It depends on what society you're in. Like if my company is in the Caribbean, is in Grenada, it's going to be different than if it's in San Francisco, or if it's in London, it's going to be different. So depending on the government, depending on the public discourse, and you know, if you get into the area of studying, parastatal agencies, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with that, but if you get into studying parastatal agencies and get into studying, you know, economics, business, banking across the world, different governments work differently. Like a foreign leader in one country can get up and leave for 2 or 3 days. He'll lose his whole government. I don't know how often this happens, but there's been people who've had to leave their country to go to a meeting, and they were gone for a week, and that's all it took. And they lost everything. The country went into an uproar, and they lost their whole country. There was a new dictator or a new leader in the country. So, I mean, that's dealing with government, but corporations, same thing, economics, finance, politics, of that. So, it depends on where you are in the world. So, if you're selling tape recorders in China and you're selling tape recorders in Mexico, you're going to get a different outcome. And then if I had a company, again, I would be looking for who is the most, like, if I'm running my business and I want to know who's stealing from me, I want to know, like, who is the most involved. I know what's happening, I know that there's a structure to it, but who's the most involved? That's who I want to go. That's who I want to talk to the most. That's who I'm going to want to ask about it. Then where's the pattern? Then you're going to look at how have these people been covering it up? Has there been a pattern of them? Like, hey, you lied to me about how many tape recorders we sold, and I know you were working with Tim and Matt doing it. The last time, you know, I caught you. This time, what pattern? Now I want to know, what pattern have you been using to cover it up with in the past? What's your pattern? And then when you ask them, you want to ask them, environment is everything. Environment is everything. When you ask somebody something like that, so you might want to sit somebody down in a relaxing environment and talk to them. But that's something. Then you're going to check out, man. These people might have a network. They might be doing it in my rival's corporation, or it could be my rival doing it in mine. And that gets into entrepreneur. Like, is this guy a criminal entrepreneur? What the hell? And then so these people, you're going to be waiting for these people to have communication with what's their communication with each other? How are they communicating to my company? You got different forms of communication. So you can have diagonal communication, lateral communication, horizontal communication, vertical communication. How are these people in my company communicating? So if you take that approach and you want to become a PI or something, which I've never done, I'm just a conspiracy researcher, but you can usually, from the people I've seen in the past, I've seen scandals come out of the newspaper and stuff, and I've seen companies be able to recover a certain amount of assets with those types of approaches. But as far as researching on a subject, say you're a journalist, if you're a journalist and you want to research, say you want to research this like during the Cold War, you want to research the Soviet Union or something like that, you're going to need more than just one person. You're going to need yourself and a couple other people. Like, there's people who go to North Korea and try to work their way into North Korea as missionaries and try to get the layout on the North Koreans and stuff like that. I don't know if that'd be a practical approach to do. You would need, a large enough contingency to. It'd have to be like the island of Han or something. You for one person, you would need like an island of Han type thing with Bruce Lee from Enter the Dragon, where the British called him in. You'd have to have a small area. If it's going to be for one person, you have to have a small area. But anyway, though, so we went through. Forensic psychology. Then we went through my favorite's parapsychology. We went through forensic psychology, and that's personal investigations, techniques, and stuff you can use. Just training your mind, staying sharp. And if somebody's going to be a researcher, like my favorite stuff is the research is the paranormal. But if somebody's going to be a researcher, you can never take somebody else's research as your own. You can never do that. So I encourage people to read as many manuals as possible. And depending on what you want to research, I think the best stuff is like researching the use of the pyramids, the ancient world, what the pyramids have been used for, or what's going on with all these unidentified flags. I think that's the most interesting stuff. But you can use the same investigative strategies for a lot of different things. Like I gave an example, if you're doing, if you're trying to investigate your company or investigate somebody else's company. Then you can hire, there's people out there who hire psychics, occult investigators, and parapsychologists, which these people sit down and they do remote viewing. And the general public is just now catching up to that. But there's people out there who are trained psychics. They can tell you what's going on at your company. Just doing a challenge. I mean, it's real. It's going on. Yeah, it is the Jameel Rawls show.